Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We have, we already voted to come back into regular session, so we are back in regular session. We did our opening prayer and invocation and pledge of allegiance earlier at 4:30, so that is all complete. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. The next portion of our meeting is public comments, and we have no one signed up. Okay. Next, we have Keep Jasper County Beautiful Award to the City of Hardeeville by Miss Lynn Boyles, otherwise known lovingly as Miss Green. Miss Boyles, and Jennifer Combs going to join us.
As you know, I'm Lynn Boyles with Keep Jasper County Beautiful, and I want to tell you how much we appreciate Hardeeville. We appreciate your support, and not only the city of Hardeeville, which is all of y'all, but we have numerous volunteers from the southern end of the county, and that's what our program is about. It's litter prevention, and we could not do without the volunteers. I gave Lori some sheets with our work on it from 2022 and 2023, and you will see all of our accomplishments, which I am very, very pleased. And also, Keep Jasper County Beautiful is a big supporter of the Earth Day event. And we donated $500 to your event this year. And I want to say thank you because we had that this morning. And those of y'all that were there, I think Jen and I look a little different right now than we did. I don't have on my snake boots and my red cheeks and all of that. So anyway, but we had a phenomenal litter drive. And I just can't tell y'all how much I appreciate Hardeeville and your support because our organization is very new. And y'all all know there's a litter problem in Jasper County, and we are trying to eradicate that litter problem by pickup and education. So at this time, I'd like to present.
You want to call the council down that received the check?
Yep. So at this time, I'd like to present y'all with this check of $500 that went towards our Earth Day litter event today. So did they just?
Okay, good. So we want a photo op?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, John.
Will the bank take that check?
Do the real one.
I can deposit with my phone.
I didn't sign my IRS check one time and they took it, so I'm sure they'll take this.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Hurry up, it's almost tomorrow.
We can, we gotta come this way. Go this way. Go this way.
There you go.
All right, thank you very much. We're all good. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate
Hey,
everything y'all do.
Jen, while we're getting settled, why don't you tell the general public what happened this morning?
I mean, rattle and kill. They crawl.
I feel like I need to turn around and address everybody. But yes, Mayor and Council, we did have a very successful litter event this morning. So if you're driving in and around the area and you see a whole bunch of blue and orange bags, those are all the volunteers that helped pick up this morning. We're very thankful for Public Works because they will be picking all that up tomorrow. Today, with the help of the Hardeeville Fire Department, Hardeeville Police Department, PRT, and numerous amounts, I think we had almost 60 people that were out there today. So we had folks from Margaritaville, Sun City, those that are local to the area here, downtown Hardeeville, that came. And today we picked up, that hasn't been calculated, the only part that has been calculated is almost 800 pounds of trash just today. So we'll get the other numbers probably sometime tomorrow. And then after that, we'll get a total and we'll get that to Miss Lynn. So, but yeah, that's what we had today. So it was very hot.
Right.
So for anyone that was out there, yeah, it was a lot. So, but we always thank our folks that are here in the community. They do a really good job of really coming together for the city and keeping her really pretty. So we're very thankful. So thank you all for being there.
Right. Thank you. Great job today. Next, we have the introduction of Fire Department Engineer, Paramedic, Mr. David Parks.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and
Good
again,
evening.
we're here to introduce you to one of our newest members. This is Mr. David Parks. He comes to us from the other coast that the United States has. No, he's come from Oregon, near Portland. Is that correct?
Yeah, Central Oregon.
Yep, Central Oregon. So I'll let you meet Mr. David Parks.
Thanks, Chief Camp. David Parks, like Chief said, I'm from Oregon, Central Oregon. Family just decided to relocate, and why not move all the way across the country? Two young children at home. I got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, a boy and a girl. One on the way, actually. So,
Oh, congratulations.
yeah, thank you. I'm just appreciative of the opportunity and grateful. And, yeah, thank you guys.
There's one important question we ask every new first responder. What's your batting average?
I couldn't tell you.
Don't worry, Steve's checked it out.
Council, any questions for Mr. Parks?
No, just welcome.
Welcome.
Looks
Good
like
to have
Steve
you.
got another quality person.
Welcome and good luck and best wishes and enjoy a long and happy career with Hardeeville.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Okay, we have the appointment of one member to the Hardeeville Planning Commission. Mr. Zimbor?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. So as part of the city manager's job, I'm supposed to be giving advice and recommendations to the council and all boards and commissions. Unfortunately, over the past several years, we haven't had a whole lot of volunteers, but thank God our community is growing and we have more people want to get involved in their local government, which is a wonderful thing. So in this case, we do have one vacancy. Unfortunately, we have 3 qualified candidates that have indicated their interest in serving. One has served previously on the Planning Commission, has several years of experience. One has all kinds of public procurement and code understanding experience, and one individual was born and raised here and is a prominent local businessman. So what I'm doing tonight is recommending that the council consider all 3 applicants, because I think all of them all 3 are extremely qualified to serve, and whatever the council believes it's in the Planning Commission's best interest to appoint, I would recommend. So that's all I have on that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Zimbor. This is as Mr. Zimbor said, it's very unusual that we have this many people apply for this position, and every one of them is qualified. One in particular, though, we as a board have for years always tried to encourage participation by what is commonly referred to as Old Hardeeville, the core constituents who have been here for generations. Mr. Richard Arzillo is a local businessman who was born and raised here. His father was a councilman before he died last April. And that family has served this community. And I, for one, am thrilled that we have the opportunity to place a lifelong resident and businessman onto this commission. So I'm going to go a little out of turn here, and before I open up for discussion, I will make a motion that we do appoint Mr. Richard Arzillo, and if I get a second, then we'll open it up for comments and questions. So we have a motion and second, and so with that, I'm going to open up to the council and start from my left with Mr. Carroll. Do you have any comments or questions?
Like I say, made only comment, like you said, you said pretty well all of it, that, Richard is a local and has been here for generations, as well as his, parents and whatever, but also, talking to Mike, you know, you want some diversity on the board, and there is nobody on the planning commission from downtown Hardeeville. So, that would be another reason for, Richard's appointment.
Mr. White.
I think John's last point, someone from old Hardeeville is very crucial, and Richard is, and his family have had a real history of service, and they know our city, and so I'm going to be supportive of that.
Mrs. Guzman.
I didn't get Mr. Arzillo's resume, and I personally feel that if we're going to appoint somebody to the Planning Commission, I don't think that being, family members being on here before qualifies for that particular job. We have to look at the whole picture and appoint somebody that is really qualified for the job and checks all the boxes. So,
Let me make a comment. We're not talking about nepotism. What we're talking about is we know him, we know his work, and we have a history with him, which is a factor because, and so it's not nepotism, or it's not because his dad served or this or that. That was just simply, we know who he is. We've appreciated his contributions. So I want to clarify that.
okay.
Any further comments? This is generally not a public comment issue, but I would entertain, if anybody does have any comments in support of one or the other, we'll certainly entertain it at this time. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. I'll call for a voice vote on this. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
We have 3 ayes and one opposed. Okay. Congratulations, Mr. Arzillo, and for the other 2 applicants, thank you very much. There's always spots open on these commissions. Please, please don't hold it against us because we didn't appoint you this time. Please come back the next time an opening, and they certainly open up quite a bit, right? So we need you. Please stay with us. Next is the reappointment of 2 members of the Hardeeville Planning Commission. Ms. Snowden.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. We have 2 members that their terms are up this month, and both wish to be reappointed. That is Mr. Jeff Foreman and Mr. Steve Talbot. And both have been well attended well and been a big contributor to the Planning Commission. So that's staff's overview of what's going forward on these appointments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's have a motion and a second first, and before I open it up to comments and questions. Do we have a motion to reappoint these 2 members?
Make a motion that we appoint these 2 members to the council, to the planning group for another term, for their contributions and good work, their first appointment.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second. I'll now open it for council comments and questions, and start from my right this time with Mrs. Guzman.
I have no comments or questions.
Mr. White?
No other questions or comments.
Mr. Carroll?
None. Browna says she works well with them and has confidence, so that's fine with me.
I have no comments or questions. I've observed them over the last few years, and they're fine members of our planning commission. I thank them as well for reapplying to serve another term. So, would anyone from the public like to express a comment or a question? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a voice vote on this. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? It carries 4-0. Next, we have an update from SCDOT in the I-95 widening project and Exit 3. We have Mr. Craig Wynn, who is quite familiar with our area. And Mr. Wynn joins the LATS committee every other month. The LATS committee, for those of you who don't know, that's the Low Country Area Transportation Study. That's the metropolitan planning organization for this area. And Craig, good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. So I've got a pretty short agenda. It's about 20 slides. We're going to go through a little bit of the background of the interstate program as a whole. Then we'll get specifically into I-95 and Exit 3. Talk about the public participation and the updates of where we currently are. So we do have the fourth largest state highway system in the United States. So for being a small state, SCDOT does own a significant portion of the roads, fourth highest in the United States. And the latest updated in population data, we are the third fastest growing population in the nation. So this is where we're at. Sorry, I apologize for that being that red being hard to see there. This is where we currently are with our interstate program. So everything in red is currently under construction. We got about 50 miles of interstate under construction, which equals about $2 billion. We have 250 miles currently in planning. So that includes I-95, a significant portion of I-95 all the way from the Georgia state line to I-26. And there's some up in the Florence area as well. Includes all of I-26 close the gap between Charleston and Columbia. And also, the 50 miles under construction also includes the major interchanges in Columbia as well. So this kind of shows where we're heading. So these are the next projects that are coming out. Let's see. So this is 2023. So 2023, we're going to see the start of the construction of the system-to-system interchange at I-26 and I-95. A portion of I-26 between mile marker 125 and 136. That also includes the phases 3 through 5 of Malfunction Junction or Carolina Crossroads. But in Columbia, everybody knows it's Malfunction Junction as much as we've tried to change the name of it. In 2024, we see the start of I-95 from mile markers 0 to 8. So that'll be towards the end of 2024. You'll start seeing construction start really in 2025. So that's kind of where we're seeing that heading. And then in 2026, you jump up and you see the next section from 8 to 21 going to construction. So we'll have 21 miles I-95 under construction at the same time. So we'll go through 0 to 8. So there'll be about a year and a half of overlap between each of the I-95 projects. And you can see the start of the closing of the gap on 26 as well. 2028 is 21 to 33. That one is currently out for advertisement for consultant selection. Those are due next Tuesday. We'll be working through the procurement to get that one started. And then our commission recently approved more rural road interstate program, which includes I-95 from 33 to the I-26. So that'll close the gap. That's probably going to start in the 2030s. So I think like 2032 is rough timeline of where that's going to start. It's probably going to start up towards the system interchange, and we'll go end to end, and kind of how we did 26, where you one end and alternate years of starting those, so that you can have a gap in the middle without a construction zone. So now I'll talk specifically about I-95 from the Savannah River to US 278. So we're looking at roughly a 10-mile corridor. It's not quite 10 miles of road construction, but that's the corridor we're looking at. It starts at the Knoxboro Creek Bridge, roughly Knoxboro Creek Bridge in Georgia. So that's the second bridge in Georgia. So you got Savannah River Bridge, and then you hit the Knoxboro Creek Bridge. So we'll start there and do the improvements. It includes replacing all of the mainline bridges and overpass bridges except for exit 5. So it goes about a mile north of US 278 before we taper in. Then we would remove that taper and continue on. So the purpose and need of this project is to improve capacity, mobility, operations, and address operational deficiencies along the corridor. So we're really looking at operational deficiencies are outdated bridges where they're getting close to they were built in the 60s and 70s, so they're getting close to their useful life. They're still in good shape, but this is the time to replace them as we're doing this widening instead of widening the bridges. So we're going to widen from 4 to 6 lanes towards the median. And then we're replacing again all the bridges. So the dual bridge over Savannah River, we're coordinating with GDOT on the replacement of that bridge. So that bridge will be replaced. All the bridges will be set up for a future 8 lane of I-95. So we'll 6 lane it now. It'll be set up where the bridges have enough width for 8 lanes in the future. That includes the dual bridges over Savannah River, Sand Island Swamp bridges, the CSX or SCL Railroad Bridge, which will be wide enough to accept exit 3, the ramps associated with exit 3. We are replacing the SC 46 bridge, John Smith Road Bridge also, and then also the bridge at exit 8 will be replaced as part of the interchange project, which I'll show that in a second. We're exit 5. We're going to do some that disconnect the frontage road from the ramps, and then we're going to signalize the top of the ramps. We're going to eliminate the acceleration or the merge movement there and pull all those into signals. So, and that helps because when we started looking at the accident or crash data in that area, we noticed it's significant for those merge movements is where a lot of the collisions were happening. Exit 8 will be a redesign to a 6-lane DDI, which that I'll have a layout of that, which shows a significant change in the overall look of that interchange. And then we're currently working with Federal Highways on an interchange modification report for that interchange. So this is the key locations, as you can see throughout the corridor. 14 bridges, two existing interchanges. So we have been able to, within last year, the State House gave additional funds to us. We accelerated each of the first phases of I-95 by 2 years or a year and a half. So this was initially in 2025. It got moved to 2024. So we went from roughly a 48-month design schedule down to 32 months. So it's a significant lift to be able to deliver this by the end of 2024, but everything is on track. So this is kind of the relocated exit 5 frontage road. So that frontage road currently ties into the ramps, which is a significant safety issue and potentially having wrong way drivers heading onto the interstate as well. So we're going to snake that road back behind the QT and those businesses and then tie back into US 17 with some turn lanes. And we have worked with some of the developments in that area and the location where that road's at. We've been coordinating with both multifamily development as well as SALT on the other side of the road on coordinating the driveways across from one another. This does not show the ramp improvements. That's a recent addition to it. Is to where that acceleration or merge movement is coming in. That's all going to come into a signal. So those top of those ramps will be signalized in the future. Here is the layout for exit 8. So this is a diverging diamond. We relocate Henry Moss Boulevard further to the east. That relocation is due because that signal where it's currently sitting at is impacting interstate operations. So everything that we're looking at doing for this project is to protect interstate operations. So again, you see elimination of driveway accesses, proposed backage road. So we're relocating pretty much all the driveways out there to tie back in a safer manner to protect the interchange. Almost all the driveways within this area are within the interchange area, so we're not allowed to have there's control of access, so driveways have to be removed from those areas. So we have had meetings with the business owners out there to discuss this. That's kind of our project development process. So we are developing as a categorical exclusion. Last summer, we met with property owners and business owners. We had a public meeting in September of 2022. We finalized all the options last fall. The final non-programmatic categorical exclusion was submitted to Federal Highways on Monday for their review, along with the updated IMR. We anticipate right-of-way acquisition needs starting this fall with construction, and are finalizing design through next summer, and then starting construction in the winter of 24-25. So this kind of talks about the public information meeting. It was held September 15th at the Rec Center, which is a great facility that you guys have. It's worked really well for us. That's where we had the business meetings at. We've utilized it we had a design field review where we came out, we utilized it. We had a bunch of people come in there, we met there, and then went out in the field and looked at it. So it's been a great resource for us to utilize. We had 115 people attend the in-person meeting. We had 476 people meet or look at the project website during the 30-day comment period. We received 82 comments, 64 of those were on the website, 6 emails, and 12 written comments at the meeting. Kind of what we heard, we had 96% of the people that commented on it were in support of the project. We did have 27 with traffic. 18% wanted the widening to extend further, but we're trying to take it off in 10-mile chunks as we go up there. There's 10, 15-mile chunks. Safety was a big concern. We did have a lot of design suggestions as well. And then a small percentage were concerned with hurricane evacuation as well. Kind of updates of where we're at. So as we evaluated the alternatives, we looked at multiple interchange types, multiple improvements for the frontage road, multiple options for John Smith Road, whether to change the skew of that bridge as it crossed, but then we started looking at the impacts associated with that from a property acquisition and wetland impacts. So the first thing we always look at, does it satisfy the purpose and need of the project? Are we doing the improvements that we say we're going to do? So that's how we first evaluate alternatives. Then we're looking at improvements to operation. Are we minimizing traffic backups on I-95? Does it help the performance of the intersections while protecting I-95 main line? That's a big one. So when we were looking at interchanges, it wasn't so much the side street or the overpass performance that we were looking at. It was the interchange. Does it back up on the interstate? So that's where we started looking at, with using interstate funds, we need to protect the interstate. And then we looked at constructability factors. Would this maintain traffic? So the plan is to maintain 2 lanes on the interstate in both directions at all times. We will see when we get to replacing a lot of the bridges, we will flip-flop traffic to the other side. So northbound will be widened. Make sure I get this. Northbound will be widened enough that we can put 4 lanes on that side, and we can open the southbound for 5 miles up to the contractor to replace all the bridges. So that's a big constructability factor. And then does this extend the life of the interchanges? So this is kind of where we're at. So in February is when we were at the rec center doing the design field review. We brought most of our designers down here. We had computer meetings with a bunch of DOT staff as well that were there. We went through all the plans, through the maintaining traffic through construction, kind of comment on the preliminary plans. All preliminary bridge plans have been submitted, so we're working on the final bridge plans, working on roadway plans. So the preliminary plans were submitted and approved in March. And then again, the non-programmatic exclusion was in February. We anticipate that being approved in June, and then a permit submittal to the Corps of Engineers in June, and then starting right-of-way acquisition in August. And then the next to-do list is the preliminary right-of-way plans will be submitted. Target date is June 16th to have those. So that will be the first round of review for approval in August. And then I'll open it up to any questions you guys have.
Thank you, Craig. Very, very thorough report. And I just want to say, Mr. Zimbor and I spent a lot of time, with Exit 3 and dealing with Secretary Hall and your department. And I can't thank you and Secretary Hall enough for all your help in making this happen, not only Exit 3, but the widening of I-95 and
And I will
supporting.
add, the Exit 3 preliminary plans have been submitted and reviewed as well. Preliminary road and bridge plans. So those are currently under design as well.
And thanks in cooperation with DOT and Secretary Hall, it was so important to the project to have Exit 3 done when the widening is done because of the economies of scale and the efficiencies of DOT handling the project. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's fair.
Okay, so we're really appreciative of all the cooperation and help you've given the city of Hardeeville and Jasper County.
Thank you.
Any questions by council for Craig?
I have a comment. Thank you for all that Harry just outlined, but also having an opportunity for residents to participate and give some feedback and some suggestions and feel part of the process is going to be a big effect. And that was a nice inclusion, and it made a difference for a lot of public opinion on this. So thank you for doing that.
John, Valerie?
Don't have anything.
Thanks for coming. I'll see you at the COG probably pretty soon.
I'll be there for the next one. But I'll be there.
Greg, I have one question regarding John Smith Road. You're going to replace that bridge or
Yes.
or fix it? Will the road be closed down while you're doing it, or just one lane? Are
Yeah,
we
so we will
completely
close-
closed
We will close it and detour up to Exit 8.
up to Exit 8?
Yeah, but we will not have the improvements at Exit 8 going on at the same time the improvements at John Smith. So
Okay,
we'll alternate those to make sure that there is a bypass option for each of those.
Since I know I'm going to get a few emails, how long do you anticipate John Smith Road being closed?
We haven't gotten to the
Okay.
construction estimate.
I
would
know
say
that's an unfair question. So-
2 weeks.
I would say at least by 9 months to 9 to 18 months would be.
Okay, listen, we understand, and it has to be done, and, but we're going to get the questions just so we have a somewhat accurate
Yeah,
answer.
and before we start construction, we'll make sure you guys know that.
Okay, great, that would be wonderful, thank you. Thank you.
All right,
If
thank you,
there are
guys.
no further questions, thank you for coming down, and thank you, and it was great seeing you again.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the presentation and approval of the minutes from the April 6th regular city council meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from April 6th?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the April 6, 2023 city council meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any further comments or questions by council? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Next, we go into old business. This is the second reading of an ordinance to annex approximately 1.41 acres of real estate. And I just want to preface that there are, what do we have? 3 ordinances attached to this particular project. This is the Okotie North Apartments located off 170. The first ordinance is to annex a strip of land so that a road can be connected to Green Acres Road. The second ordinance is to amend the zoning. And the third ordinance is to adopt the master plan. So what I suggest to council and the public, we do have to have 3 separate public hearings and votes. But if everybody could address all their questions at the same time during the first conversations, then we can move that along. But you certainly have the option of waiting for each individual ordinance. So, having said that, let's start the questioning to my right with Mrs. Guzman.
So like we've said before with this particular project, we had the SC dot workshop the other day. And it still did not convince me that we have adequately addressed the safety issue of the traffic. We have to worry about hurricane evacuation when there are hurricanes. And like when we talked with SC Dot, they had recommended a 30-foot turn lane, in which, in my opinion, I stopped by there yesterday and took a look at where this proposed entrance to this development was going to come. I stood there and I watched the 4 o'clock traffic go by and go by and I go by. And I said to myself, that 300-foot exclusive right turn lane is not going to cut all that traffic that may stack up at that time with school buses, people coming after work, and that sort of thing. And it will most definitely exceed that 200-foot taper, and then back traffic onto the right turn, the right lane of 170. And then thereby making 170 just a one travel lane during high traffic times. So I have an issue with that because I don't think deficiencies and possible improvements to safety, both operationally and physically, have been addressed by this project. And the fact that this is high density also makes this whole traffic situation kind of reckless and also hazardous to those of us who travel up and down 170 on a regular basis. So as a developer, you guys have the right to build what you want to build. And as speaking for myself, when the voters sent me over here, those are the folks that have my loyalty, because I have to watch out for the taxpayers before I watch out for anybody else. While I agree that the project is a great project, I don't think the safety aspect of it has been addressed adequately. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. White.
I think Val raises a concern that I can identify. I believe there are solutions to the safety issues. What I don't feel is I feel there's some more work to be done because this is something you don't want to get wrong. And it's a piece of our community that everyone has a point of view, which is primarily safety. And to not do a couple more think out louds on this and take into consideration some of Val's concerns. Let me ask you a question, Val. This is something that you can see with some more thought and some purposeful thinking that we can get to a good place. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what I sense. And my feeling is that concern that Val has, which other of us have, is something worth a little more time to get everyone behind this and take advantage of some of your insights and the folks that you feel are giving you some feedback. And if we do that, I think we'll be a lot smarter on this project.
Like I said, I think the project is a great project.
I do too.
The issue that I have is that I don't think this traffic impact analysis identified and documented those deficiencies, and they did not come up with any kind of mitigation efforts to this sort of thing. When I think of this multifamily development, I think of school buses, and an average school bus is about 40 feet long, and that 300-foot turn lane is not going to be adequate if you have multiple school buses, or you have a school bus, you have an SUV, a pickup truck, another car, or whatever, and they're all stacking behind the school bus trying to make that right turn into the development. This is a multi-family development, so we have to be conscious of that fact. And a school bus their turning radius is at least a minimum of 40 feet. How wide is this throat going to be in order for these vehicles to turn? And another thing is, because this is a 3-story apartment complex, I'm worried about, will our ladder trucks in HFD be able to negotiate that turn safely? That was another issue that I had, so.
I get the impression from Steve that that was something you've concerned, Steve's sitting back there, so you got that under control, right?
Yes, the fire marshal will review all those plans to make sure that our turn radiuses will be sufficient.
Yeah.
Yes. So we should have no problem with that.
Let me just conclude my comments. I think it's a great project. I'm behind it. I think we have a couple of issues here that we can, with a little more thoughtfulness, get consensus on. And I think that's a lot more important than rushing and having some concerns about this. And so my recommendation is that we close those gaps and build the kind of consensus I think this project deserves and our community deserves. I'm going to throw it to you, John.
Mr. Carroll.
I'm kind of torn. I see where Val is coming from, and she does have some concerns. And of course, Bo reiterated that. But I also am torn because when we talk to the DOT, the project here is, a lot of it is in the restraints of the DOT. They can only do so much, and if the DOT says you can't do this, you can't do it. And so, I understand, like I said, I'm just torn. I'm sure everybody else on council is too, because it's a great project, and I just, in a way, to me, it's frustrating because it's a good project, but some of the constraints that we wanted eliminated, the DOT's not going to allow it to be eliminated. They told us that plain as they could be the other day. So that being said, the consensus of the council, I guess, is to for more study, but I just don't know what more you can do if the highway department's not going to let you do it. I don't know what else you can do, but.
Yes, please.
Part of what I was thinking about with some of what we heard from DOTC is it's important to give that feedback to a lot of in other words, the next step to me is giving the feedback about what we've learned. It makes some of the concerns non-doable. And so that what you do is you take a list of this many concerns and you quickly clarify this group, there's nothing that can be done, and the Department of Transportation wouldn't allow any of those things. So then what you're really left with are the meat issues that something can be done with or more consensus could be built. So I'm going to clarify where I'm at on that, John.
Yeah.
Any other questions before I start mine?
No, sir.
I think everybody up here is struggling the same way. I can't remember the last time I ever walked into a meeting and still didn't know how I was going to vote. It's that difficult because the safety issues that Mrs. Guzman points out, we all feel it, regardless of traffic studies or anything else. It's a concern. There's 0.3 of a mile and now 4 curb cuts. It's on a 60-mile-an-hour road. Add to the fact, as Mrs. Guzman said, that some of those turns are by school buses because this is a family dwelling. It's really difficult. And it's difficult because the project is a worthy one. We need apartments in this area. And this is a good quality project by good quality people. So it is really difficult. But I want to start with something, and I would ask Ms. Snowden if you could come up and answer a couple questions. Ms. Snowden and Ms. Woodrow. And I'm got some questions because I'm reviewing the minutes that we just approved, and I just want to make sure that for the public record, we all have this straight. Hypothetically, this right now, one of the issues that we have to deal with is change the zoning from commercial to residential, correct? So let's say it's commercial. If a commercial development came in instead of this residential, what would they have to go through in order to get approval to do a commercial product here? So they just go to staff review. So we are putting in 2 access points into this residential area. Would they have to do the same thing?
We would need to look at the type of development. It's the general commercial zoning, though, is the most intense commercial that we have. So, but it just depends. It could be multiple. They could subdivide it. It could be multiple convenience stores. It could be.
So would they need 2 entrances?
That would be up to the fire department, the fire marshal. That's not something we can answer. That's based on the use and life safety.
And would that have to come to council?
No.
And how about the annexation of the road? Would they need that road to create a commercial?
They would not need that road, no.
So they could just put a road into 170 without council's approval, SCDOT's approval, they'd just put in a road.
Just the curb cut.
They would go through the encroachment permitting process with SCDOT.
Okay. And as part of this project, we had to deal with some wetlands and allow that. A commercial product, would they have to do the same thing?
They would go through the same Army Corps permitting process as well as staff review, committee review, but yes.
Just like this project is.
So in order for that commercial entity to develop this property, the mitigation of the wetlands that we're doing as part of this master plan, they would have to do that as well and only go through staff review committee.
Yes.
We don't have the ultimate authority on those wetlands, the Army Corps and DHEC do.
And do we have authority over it now if we approve it as residents?
We don't, but they have to abide by the master plan that you're approving. So there are some more.
So
Your assurances are there because you have that master plan.
So that master plan doesn't assure that the Army Corps will mitigate those wetlands?
It adds another layer on top of it.
It adds another layer of approval. So what happens if the Army Corps doesn't approve that?
Then they can't.
That's the Army Corps' jurisdiction.
I'm sorry?
The Army Corps of Engineers' jurisdiction.
But so if they didn't, what would happen to this apartment project? You have
They can only, so if you approve this master plan, where they're proposing to build is where they would have to build. Any wetland that they're planning on building on, they would have to get that approval from the Army Corps. If the Army Corps doesn't give them that approval, then they'd have to rework their plan.
But aren't we, as part of approving this apartment complex, there's a portion of wetlands that we're approving?
If the Army Corps approves it. We are only
It's an
approving
if.
the Army
So my question was, if the Army Corps doesn't approve it, and it's right in the middle of this apartment complex, what happens?
Then they would have to rework the plan.
They'd have to rework the master plan to build around the wetlands. How it would work. So let me ask you another question. If the council rejected this apartment complex and then a commercial thing came in here, now it has to go to site review committee and approved by you all?
Yeah, it would
Either way.
Mayor, even if there's a master plan, it still goes to site review committee for a site permit.
No, what I'm getting at is this. If the council rejected this, you as staff would know that we are opposed to something because of, not because of the project, but because of traffic. Wouldn't you consult with, you have no authority.
Comes in if it meets the standards of our.
If it meets the standards,
We have.
you have to approve it. You don't have any choice but to do so. Okay. So, basically the statement is that, that was made, by Mr. Wiedauer. Did I say that right? Wiedauer. That if we don't change to residential, commercial could go in there and that would not be as desirable a use as residential, which is a subjective opinion. Okay, because
Anything under the general commercial zoning district that they could fit on that property, yes.
and commercial, we don't know, because we don't know what it would be, whether that would be more traffic, less traffic, what types of traffic. Certainly wouldn't be school buses. So I guess one of the things that I want to make sure for council, and why I'm asking the questions, because in the last two meetings, there was a big deal made about, well, you should approve this because there's a bigger evil in commercial than in residential. I just think it's very important that we as a council, we should do what's right. I don't care if we get sued, or if some other thing goes in there, or if we have the threat of Jasper County. The threats, if we don't approve this, for me personally, hold no water. It doesn't matter, because I always believe that the lesser of two evils is still an evil, if we think that. So I guess I'm just saying, because I want everybody to understand the repercussions of our decision. And it should be because of the decision of what's right or wrong. What you've told us is that something could go in there and still have a traffic issue on 170 if we don't approve the residents. Okay? And, that should be, we should deal with that in and of itself, not approve this because of the threat that something else will go in there, but because something will eventually go in there, it seems to me. Okay, thank you for that. I want to deal with some other questions, particularly by the public. And we addressed this to SCDOT the other day. And Mr. Coleman, who has been a regular watcher of our proceedings, dealt with the setbacks. We have 50-foot setbacks, is that correct? 50 foot. And the gentleman makes the point that a larger setback is common along 170, and he uses as an example the three-story building of Canterfield, which is 145 to 170. The one-story, the Tidewatch ER is a setback of 120. And the other thing that we discussed at the meeting with DOT the other day was that Mrs. Guzman's concerned about traffic backing up on 170 getting in there. And we talked about if the setback is larger, so now traffic can flow in there before it has to stop, and therefore have a longer way, a backlog before it gets to 170. Is a larger setback an unreasonable request?
So I do want to clarify a few things with Mr. Coleman's comments because we did go back and research, and I'm not sure where he made the measurements from. It could have been the edge of pavement, not the property line, which would have been beyond the right of way. I did go back and check, and the freestanding ER has a 50-foot buffer. The Canterfield building has a 25-foot buffer, and the Island Car Wash has a 25-foot buffer. The others are located in Jasper County, so I don't have that data, but I did check our applications. It's what we're talking about for the buffer is a buffer, not necessarily setback. But not so their building locations are not the same as a buffer.
No, I think what he's saying is that the building itself is that amount of distance from the roadway.
So if
So
he
what's
measured-
the distance from the roadway to the first building? And more importantly, what's the distance to the first stop sign when you come into?
I just brought the information from the previous because
No, thank you. That's a
there's
good point.
it's a different definition. So
Different definition. Good. I'm glad you clarified that. Thank you.
Connor Blaney with Ward Edwards Engineering. The distance from the road edge of the proposed first entrance centered at this proposed development to the first intersection is approximately 160 or so feet. Canterfield, for instance, that distance is 80 feet to the first intersection.
So the first building, parking lot, whatever you want to call it, is more than 160?
That is to the intersection of what?
That's to the intersection.
Yes.
So is there buildings before that intersection?
Yes, but it's maintained to be at least 50 feet or greater back because of the IMP and
So the
EV.
back of the first building is how far from the road?
Important to show where the buildings are. Just get it down.
Mr. Mayor, again, Marcus Wiedauer. Good to see y'all.
Good to see you again.
So the discussion being, we have a 50-foot buffer here, but there is no ability for a car, there wouldn't even be a stop sign as the cars come in. There's no need for them to stop. But the first time a car would even turn, there's no ability. Yes, the back of this building might be closer to the road, but for a car coming in, and it's the first time it would even slow down, it would be 160 feet into the development before it would ever make a maneuver of any kind.
Okay, so back to my question. How close to the road is the back of those two buildings closest to 170?
The way they're currently positioned close to the road, if you're talking about pavement's edge, they're approximately 85 feet. You have a 50-foot buffer. We're about 5 feet off the buffer. You have a 50-foot buffer here, and then you have the grass between our property and the actual pavement. All of that added together will be approximately 80 to 85 feet.
One of the reasons I'm asking the question, Chief Woodward and I were at a meeting this afternoon, and one of the complaints that we hear frequently, and I get it all the time, how could you approve something so close to a highway with all that noise? And Chief Woodward answered the question and said the council deals with that all the time. One of the, even though people go and rent it and they say, well, how could you approve something this close to a highway? Are there any noise mitigation features on these buildings? Because the noise level of those people that are on that highway is going to be extremely high.
So we discussed this many months ago at this point. It came up and hadn't since, but we use the appropriate windows. Again, I think I addressed it in this way before. You know, we don't want our tenants putting on Zillow that they don't want to live there because it's too noisy. That obviously is not good for us either. But we use double pane windows. We amp up our insulation in our walls. We have not gotten into, like, we're obviously just trying to get to a master plan where we can kind of get into more of the nitty gritty. We discussed doing a planted berm across the top across the frontage to be able to mitigate that noise even more. We've done that on several of our properties and would commit to do that tonight if you guys saw so fit. Also on Monday, when this came up, and I know it was addressing the concern over stacking as you came in, which I think I've addressed it. With that kind of distance before a turn, I think we have plenty of room for cars to come in before there's any sort of slowdown. I don't think increasing a buffer, for instance, if those buildings weren't there, you'd still have 160 feet until there was a turn for a car. So when the conversation came up, though, I did ask the team to go back and look at this. If it helps, I think you guys have seen, I have tried my best to find solutions. I can't find a solution between when the South Carolina DOT and you guys disagree on what to do with traffic. I am limited there. But we did go back and look, and if it makes you feel better, we can increase that to a 75-foot buffer without significantly changing things. We'd just have to kind of shrink in things. We wouldn't have as much space between the front of those buildings, the parking. But if that's something that would please the board and allow us to move forward, I can commit to a 75-foot buffer, which is 3 times.
More important to me would be, I mean, 25 to 50 to 75 isn't going to mitigate the noise. But what would be, I am interested in something you did say, and that is doing some sort of berming and some, not only from a noise mitigation standpoint, but just from a, having an attractive front along 170 is berming and trees. Is that something that we can put into this agreement?
I'm happy to do that. And I had committed to that previously. We just, we got stuck on the traffic and never got back to that.
Yeah.
But I am perfectly happy berming that. I think the only reason you don't see anything like that again, we're not to that level of detail yet. And for instance, if there was a way to keep a lot of mature trees along there, we might look at that. But if we want to berm and do a planted berm, I am absolutely happy to commit to that tonight.
Well, that whole front is treed. I've always preferred to leave the natural tree line that's there.
Which is what we would do in this situation with a 50-foot buffer. We wouldn't touch it. That's the intent of the buffer. But if we want to do a planted berm, I'm happy to commit to that.
Well, first choice is to leave the tree line. Second choice is to add a planted berm in addition, because I think that would help mitigate the noise that it's going to occur. I mean, I have my neighbors complaining about Argent Boulevard. And that's a 100-foot buffer. So those kind of high-speed roads generate a lot of road noise. I mean, we know that. Mr. White, did you have something to add?
I was going to say the double pane windows as a noise reduction is another important thing. I wanted to just say I hear you saying that's a commitment you're willing to make as well.
Absolutely.
Good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
The other thing that we get all the time, and that is when there was a meeting, and I think you have the results of the meeting with Beaufort County, one of the things that was said is that the I-170 access plan can be implemented if this goes in. So it's not going to prohibit the plan that's there. But the other thing that was discussed is putting in a frontage road, so it would alleviate that 0.3 of a mile intersection with all those curve cuts. And the answer was, Well, that would require to get cooperation from adjacent property owners. I have that correct? One of the things I get from residents all the time is, well, why don't you do that first before you approve it? And that's a legitimate question. Now, that would take a lot of time, right? Shouldn't, and that's why we'll go back to Mrs. Guzman and Mr. White. If there is another potential solution, shouldn't we explore that first and not just reject it out of hand?
This one, yes, to answer your question, that was explored up front, with the property owners and talking to Riverwalk and some of the other places along. We also have committed to working with Beaufort County and Jasper County and those property owners. There are a lot of existing things. I think Katie mentioned Tidewatch ER would be right in the middle of that. The building would be right in the middle of that frontage road as it's been discussed. But this project, as they've designed it, has that horizontal that would come from Green Acres all the way over to their edge of property that would ultimately be the part for that. So they have their leg of it automatically in there already. So that is one place that we're able to discuss that all up front. But as far as the surrounding property owners, right now, there's nowhere they would have to remove buildings, so they're not ready to go that next step.
And just to confirm, Riverwalk rejected a proposal to go through there. Is that true?
As we were trying to gain access, they would not even allow access to their property. So that was not discussed fully as far as that one road, but they were not willing at that point to allow that rear access.
Mr. White, did you?
Brenna, what I sense as we listen to some of the things you were willing to do with some of the concerns, my sense is you're behind that and agree with that and think those are good steps. I'm asking you.
Yes, the fact that it was already designed.
Yes.
That I'm gonna call it a T. It's not exactly a T, but they had that horizontal parallel to 170 roadway or driveway that could be converted into the roadway. That was definitely a big plus for moving forward in the future with that frontage system.
Thank you.
Again, I'm going back to Mr. Coleman's comments and back to trees. And please refresh my memory. Mr. Coleman says that the tree protection rules are being exempted in this PDD. Do we have a response to that?
The way this is written, they will follow the requirements of the MZDO for the tree protection and landscaping requirements.
So that means there'll be, the area will be clear cut, correct?
Not necessarily, no.
Not necessarily.
No, we will preserve trees where possible, including the buffers, the undisturbed natural buffers, areas around the wetlands, anywhere that there are trees that, don't need to be removed. Staff review committee doesn't just sign off on complete removal. And any, significant trees will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. And then landscaping requirements will result in at least the minimum of 15 trees per acre.
So please clarify then, so it's on the public record. According to the MDZO, we're required to replace 15 trees per acre of indigenous South Carolina hardwood trees.
Yes, they're required to have 15 trees per acre for their entire development, yes.
For their entire development. Now, does that include trees you don't cut down?
Yes, it does. You get credit for preserving trees.
You get credit for preserving trees. And that's part of the MDZO. Okay, again, I've called for a review of that tree thing because that's something that I don't necessarily agree with. I can't change it because it's in the code, but I think if we have a tree replacement ordinance, we should replace trees and not just count the ones that are
It's a
saved.
combination of both, but
Okay.
we try to preserve, if we can preserve significant trees, then those are mature and provide a better benefit to the overall development. So
And excuse me for bringing up an old question, but we've so focused on public safety, I forgot. How much open space do we have in this development?
I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
It should state it in the tables listed at the
I
bottom.
wish my eyesight was that good.
It's just by acreage.
I'm talking about, Katie, you know what I mean, the active open spaces, spaces that are not, counting I don't want to count lagoons. Lagoons you can't swim in. They're not active open spaces. How much open space do we have in there for parks, playgrounds, whatever? I'm sorry. Again, I've been so focused on public safety, I forgot to ask this the last time. Okay, if you could, okay.
30% total open space, and 33% of that open space is a minimum to be active open space.
Okay. All right. I think I've done my questions. Let's go into, and I'll open it back to the council for further questions after we go further. But at this time, let's proceed into public comments. And I gave Mrs. Pomerico the letter that we as a council received, but I'd like it read into the record. This is from the Coastal Conservation League and Mr. Grant McClure. Mrs. Pomerico, would you please?
Letter is dated April 5th, 2023. Dear Mayor Williams and Hardeeville City Council, on behalf of the Coastal Conservation League, thank you for the opportunity to comment on agenda items 8A through C related to the 300-unit North Oakney multifamily PDD. The SC 170 corridor is already significantly strained by existing and previously approved development, including within the city's jurisdiction. Between 2010 and 2020, the city of Hardeeville's population increased by 200%. This unprecedented growth ushered in an onslaught of PDD and annexation requests. Hardeeville has already approved over 60,000 dwelling units, with more projects in the pipeline. Approving even more development in this already overburdened corridor and service area exacerbates problems currently experienced with traffic congestion, insufficient water treatment capacity, and too much impervious cover, example rooftops and pavement, around the Oakney River headwaters than the system can naturally manage without devastating water quality and community of life impacts. The League encourages Hardeeville to assess the cumulative impacts of this growth. This assessment is imperative to protect our regionally shared natural resources, aging infrastructure, and quality of life. Expanding the tax base provides immediately appealing incentives. However, over the long term, providing services across a sprawling landscape is expensive for a municipality. Those costs eventually outweigh the short-term gains, and municipalities end up chasing the dog's tail. The North Oakney multifamily PDD represents just one individual project that is part of a larger pattern of approving new development on the outer edges of Hardeeville without first ensuring sufficient infrastructure in place to support it or addressing existing infrastructure concerns, which is unsustainable and has ripple effects across neighboring jurisdictions. This council has inherited many development decisions made by previous councils. However, the region is nearing a tipping point. Now is the time to break from this pattern and explore more creative ways to accommodate the needs of current and new residents. For example, downtown revitalization is a priority in the city's comprehensive plan. New development should be concentrated in the city's urban core, not spread endlessly out into unincorporated or greenfield parts of Jasper County. We encourage Hardeeville to incentivize redevelopment and infill development as strategies to manage growth and lessen growth pressure in rural areas. As elected officials, the public entrusted this council to make decisions on their behalf to safeguard their quality of life, health, safety, and well-being. It is this council on behalf of the people who wields the power and guards the community. It is up to you to demand more of those who wish to develop here, and it is okay to turn down projects when environmental, cultural, or infrastructure-related challenges are inherent to a site or too great to justify any perceived short-term gains. Thank you for so much for your time and consideration, and I look forward to working with you all to address these issues in the future.
Thank you, Mr. McClure, as always, for your comments. I'd like to now ask anyone in the audience or online if you would like to address the council with any comments or questions. Juan, do we have anyone online?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone from the public? I'm going to call for a motion, but I do want to just make a statement beforehand. I hate the danger inherent in this project. I feel it as a driver, but after workshop, first reading, consultation with DOT and Beaufort County and Jasper County, no one has come up with a safety solution better than what is proposed. This site will be developed at some point or another by someone or other, and we'll have no greater solution than we have today. And that's what has given me such a few sleepless nights, because there are conflicting priorities. But I don't see, after all these reviews, all these questions, I don't see anybody coming forward with a better idea. So, and we've delayed this, we've tabled this, we've had workshops because we were hoping that someone would come up with a better public safety plan than what we have. I hate it. I agree with Mrs. Guzman, but I don't see any choice here. So at this point, we've discussed it, we beat it to death, and we need to make some sort of decision. So at this point, I'd like a motion to approve, disapprove, or make any changes to, we have to do, if the first one passes, we have to do all three. So the first one is the annexation of the 1.41 acres, and that is ordinance, and this is second reading, this is the last vote, 2023-2-2B.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
can say something?
please.
You couldn't have summed that up any better. The project is great. Y'all have gone overboard. And even today, offering some extra things. I am concerned also about traffic. But after, as the mayor said, our DOT workshop, to me, that it was frustrating in some ways, but it helped clarify some issues too with the DOT in the workshop. And I just don't know what more y'all could do than what you've done. And I can't see another project coming, like the mayor said, coming down the pipe later on that would be as friendly to the environment and as friendly to the issues as y'all could be in y'all's restraint. I mean, y'all are restrained to a certain extent, and it's frustrating probably for y'all too. But anyway, running my mouth, but I felt I had to say that. But anyway, I'll make a motion to approve on second reading ordinance 2023-2-2B.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any further comments or questions by council? And as allowed by our rules of order, I'm going to call for a roll call vote on this, and for everyone involved here. The reason we instituted this, each council member has one last chance to explain their vote if they so choose. And that's why I will call for a roll call because this is so agonizing. I will give the council that opportunity as they make their vote if they have one final comment to make. So, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Councilman Carroll,
I've already expressed my opinion, Mayor, so yes.
Mayor Pro Tem White,
What we know is much better than what we don't know, and I think that we've had a thoughtful plan here, some concerns, but for me, it's a yes.
Councilwoman Guzman,
No.
Mayor Williams,
I just hope my conscience doesn't suffer someday. I'll say yes. The ordinance to annex the property has passed. The next ordinance is the ordinance to amend the zoning to go from, and this is for the entire area, including the annexed area, of 23.74 acres. That is ordinance 2023-2-2C. Do I have a motion to approve, disapprove, or make any changes to this ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve on second reading ordinance 2023-2-2C.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further comments or questions by council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem White,
Yes.
Councilwoman Guzman,
No.
Councilman Carroll,
Yes.
Mayor Williams,
One comment. I applaud Councilwoman Guzman for her courage, but I'll vote yes. The zoning amendment has passed 3-1. The third and final ordinance regarding this property is ordinance number 2023 and 2-2D, and this is adopting the master plan. And I believe this is the point at which that we will, I think any motion should add the 75-foot buffer and the berm.
Correct.
So if there is a motion to approve this, please add those two items in. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve on second reading master plan ordinance number 2023-2-2D with the inclusion of the 75-foot buffer and the berm.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further comments or questions by council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilwoman Guzman,
No.
Councilman Carroll,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem White,
Yes.
Mayor Williams,
This has been really tough, and I want to thank the council for, all their hard work, all their thoughts, and all the combined efforts to try to make the right decision for the citizens of Hardeeville. And as you can see with the split vote, and I know Mr. Mearsman had his reservations as well, this was not an easy thing. So I want to thank my fellow council members for their diligence in this, and for having the courage to stand up to what they believe in, and having the courage to stand up for what was a very difficult decision. And having said that, my vote is yes. This passes 3-1. Welcome to the city of Hardeeville. Good luck. You know our concerns. Please build a good project, keep whatever safety measures you can possibly do to keep our community safe along that very dangerous roadway.
Thank you for working through the process with me, and happy to be here.
Congratulations. Next, we have the second reading. This also is another project. And I don't know which one I lost more sleep over, but this one has only one ordinance, and this is the adoption of a master plan, so we only have one vote on this. And this is the second reading of an ordinance to adopt the master plan submitted for a tract of land consisting of approximately 30.1 acres, known generally as Argent 2 Parcel F. This is ordinance 2023-2-16B. Mr. Zimbor, lead us on.
Thank you, sir. The council did approve first reading. We've had a workshop. We had first reading. We did have a very detailed workshop with South Carolina Department of Transportation, which I'd like to acknowledge their efforts. One of my first questions was, with the district office, we had 3 officials. I said, how often do you conduct these meetings with local governments on site? And I guess it doesn't happen very often. So we were very thankful for their time with us, and they went through a very detailed process explaining encroachment permits and TIAs and mitigation and the process and how local government is involved in that decision making and a whole bunch of things. So it's very, very informative. The applicant is here to answer any questions. I know we did thoroughly review the proposed application, the proposed mitigation that is proposed as part of this application. So I know the mayor and the council has some questions about some of the issues that were raised. So we're recommending adoption at second reading of this master plan for the ordinance. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, before I open this up to questioning, as I have done in the past, whenever I have contact with the developer prior to the meeting, for the purpose of public disclosure, I was called by Mr. Raines on Tuesday evening, and we had a conversation. I have summarized that conversation to staff and council so that they're aware that I was contacted by a developer in advance of a vote, and I reported that to the council as I am reporting it now to the public. I believe that the gist of those that conversation will be addressed in the proposal and the presentation. If not, I will add whatever is not disclosed during the process. So for the sake of not repeating everything, I think we'll turn it over to the developer to explain any modifications to the original plan.
If you don't want, that'd be great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Raines, and I'm the division president for Pulte Homes, the developer of Sun City. The staff, the council, the DOT, there are quite a few people that have spent a lot of time on this project and need to be thanked for their efforts. I apologize for missing the meeting on Monday, and part of the reason I made the phone call on Tuesday was to apologize for missing that meeting and then thought through what had been proposed, or at least what had been relayed to me, and then the potential solutions or alternatives that were discussed. When I got it relayed to me about the options that were discussed and the lack of viability of them, I was concerned and thought it would be a good use of time to reach out to the mayor and talk about additional alternatives that we could consider. We do have from the meeting on Monday a couple things that were discussed and we evaluated. The first one was around the 400-foot offset for that intersection, and could we figure out a way to jog the intersections or adjust them and meet both the DOT requirements and then also the city's request. And I believe if you hit forward, okay, if you hit the document we'll put up will show that there's a conflict. There's actually 3 conflicts on the opposing side of the road, the Argent Boulevard. You end up having an influence with our intersection with the 2 that are further east, if we do offset it by the 400 feet. We try to do is measure this for you guys. It's a little bit off the page here, but we try to measure out the 400 feet that was discussed at the meeting, and then we identified the additional driveways that would be influenced if we relocated. And then I think y'all talked about the potential for it to be aligned with Village across the street. I do think there's a benefit to that long term. I don't know exactly when or if, but my hope is in the future, as the rest of the Village Peninsula track is developed, that there would be a signal intersection there. The next idea that, from my understanding from Monday's meeting, was could we consider or find a way to consider an exit out the back, even if it required additional wetland impact. As you guys will recall, when we did the rezoning to annex into the city, the additional firewood parcel, we called it, but it was the firewood processing center that's further down off the page here. We made a commitment, we being the developer of Sun City, that we would provide a wetland fill permit in this location, meaning that we went ahead and applied for and got from the Army Corps of Engineers the ability for the association to have connectivity in the future if it was ever requested, depending on just how this property got developed. As promised, we did this. Unfortunately, as you can see, there's no real way to come across the wetlands and get to a roadway system over here. The first one you can get to would be down here. So that would mean we would have to come down utilizing the existing wetland fill permit we do have, and then we would be building a road system behind houses and in a very hotly debated area that we had set aside for future open space for the association at that time we did the annexation. So I don't think this is a viable one, just because I do feel the homeowners there, haven't spoke to any of them individually, but I do think this would be a massive change and a bone of contention if we did this. And then there's one additional nuance to it. This roadway system here is not public. So there would need to be a working out with an adjacent homeowner or a property owner who has not been user-friendly in the past when we have tried to get some access to their property. So both of those coming up as unviable from the meeting on Monday, I reached out to the mayor and said, hey, is there other things that we can talk through as options? Are there ways for us to be able to move the project forward and alleviate the concerns that we were hearing from you guys, which was mostly around the way the site is set up and the concern that we would have a lot of truss trucks coming in and out of the facility on a regular basis. And so the proposal I made to him and I make to you guys now would be to consider the site being modified to reduce the overall size of this laydown area. I don't want there to be a misunderstanding that we're going to have dozens upon dozens of truss packages here. And I can see with the size of this laydown yard that it would produce a clear ability to put down a lot of them. And so what we proposed is to come through, or what I'm proposing now, I should say, is to come through and limit this property, take this off of the proposed site plan if this is amenable to the council, take this off and say, hey, we won't have as big of a property or big of a laydown yard as originally proposed, to help alleviate the concern that there's going to be dozens of trusses here, and it will be using this to have a ton of truss trucks coming in and out on a daily basis. The other option that I propose and propose now as well is to consider, since we don't know when this would be signalized, it obviously would require a warrant study with the DOT, that we would, during the period that it isn't signalized, we would do a write-in and write-out only for our truss trucks or our semi trucks that are bringing in on an irregular basis, but on a regular enough basis that I think your concern is valid from a safety perspective. But we want to have and maintain the flexibility to be able to bring them here instead of stack them in roadways if the need is there. It is the potential as we go through rainy seasons that we will have multiple trusses that come, and we've had concerns in the past where they end up in the roadway or they end up clogging up, and I don't want to have a fire concern or a fire issue within the community. And so the flexibility to be able to still have a laydown yard here, or maybe as much as 5 trusses at most, would be able to be dropped. Truss packages, I should say, could be dropped, is what I'm proposing. Again, It is meant to be my market office in conjunction with ICG's market office. Today, I house about 25 employees at the one that's on King Creek Lane, and I'd like to move them out of the neighborhood there. They've been very gracious to us for the last possibly 15, 16 years, and I'd like to get out of their backyard and move my team over here. That is one of the main functions of the building, in conjunction with ICG's team will be there with us as well. We're one company. It's two separate entities, but we're all owned by Pulte Group. That help?
Yeah, but
Did I miss anything?
you're not done.
Okay, good.
I'm just going through my notes that I sent to the council, and the conversation started initially, and correct me if I'm wrong, about my concerns about that intersection.
Yes, sir.
And the fact that there are these large trucks with trusses coming in. And I forgot to put the picture out I have on my phone. Because they come in through Dreamscape right now. And as I'm putting my tie on, after a meeting with Chief Woodward with your residents, and one of the hot topics is the unsafety of Argent Boulevard. And a large part contributed by the fact of all the development of Sun City. So I know you're concerned about those residents, and they clearly, it's the number one hot button for everyone along there. It's not just Sun City. Riverton Point is in an uproar. Harpstone Lakes at Shortcut Road, they have only one access out. So everything we add on to Argent Boulevard just exacerbates the situation. And my big concern was the fact that we have in this traffic study that we have in our document, there's like 11 accidents in 4 years at Village Road. And that's before all this stuff gets built. That's before you come in there. That's already a high accident intersection without anything else coming in. So that's my concern. And it was concerned about the trusses, and we went on to talk about it right in, right out. But it hit me. You have 500 acres across the street with trusses going in there. Can't you put aside 5 acres and take your trusses there and not have truss trucks coming into this? Isn't that a more viable solution? Not only so it alleviates our concern, which is that intersection, but also it helps alleviate the concern of your residents, of the people that you sell homes to and plan to sell homes. You got 500 acres. Why do we have to have big trucks come into that spot?
Yeah, as I had mentioned the other night, it is a little bit of a misunderstanding from the original meetings that were had. There's never been a plan for this to be where we produce trusses or where we bring trusses and then cross dock them or change them from one truck to the next. It is something that will happen. So I don't want to say it's never going to happen, but the intent is for this not to be a cross docking of trusses. I believe Lee told us in a meeting, and I don't want to misquote it because I know it's recorded and everybody will look it up. 10 per week is the most that we would ever see from a semis coming in, right? Is that right? And so it is other things that come into our facility that, we do have loose lumber that would come in that we put into packs and then ship out to individual sites. But what we do with trusses, as we do them today, because we don't have a 5-acre site anywhere in Sun City, is we deliver them directly to the home site that's being built. It is not efficient for us to actually try to handle them twice. They get broken, they get damaged. It is better for them to be dropped off. It is more of a flexibility for us to be able to bring them here in the event that we get behind on slab pours and we don't want to drop them in the streets and create bigger problems or health or safety problems within the neighborhoods.
So Matt, what I'm suggesting to you is there's 10 trucks a week coming in that's going to add to the hazard of Argent Boulevard. You have 500 acres, a quarter of a mile away, and a roadway in there. That's going to take 10 years to get developed. Whether take those 10 trucks a day and have them delivered over there. And then you eliminate a big concern of this council, and it makes the decision a hell of a lot easier. Excuse my, the Jersey boy comes out of me once in a while. Forgive me from the audience. It would make this project a heck of a lot easier to swallow if you, and it wouldn't cost you an extra cent other than to put a landing pad on part of the 500 acres you got sitting there for the next 10 years. So to me, it seems like a good solution for everybody. You've said to your community, Sun City, that you're concerned about their safety by doing it. You've told this council that you're willing to make a change on the biggest thing we have a concern about. And I think that's a win-win for everybody. Why does it have to be stored? Whether it's 1, 10, 100, why does it have to be stored in or planted in that spot when you have 500 acres, 1/4 of a mile right down the road?
I think I keep talking too much when I answer your question. They're not going to be stored there. I'll stop with that.
They're going to come in there. What you're suggesting is that truss trucks are going to come in there, lay on that ground, and possibly in the future, if they're not now. Did I hear the right thing? Or
There's the flexibility of that, but not every truss that we use, say we build 500 houses a year, we're not going to put 500 trusses in and out of this facility for the 500 houses. There is the potential from time to time that we want that flexibility, but it's not the intent that 500 truss packages would work through this facility
I just heard
every month, every
10
year.
a week.
That's semis that come in with various materials.
I don't care what's on there. I'm talking about the semis. You know, that's the concern we have.
Well, let me address that then.
What if
That's a
we
different-
say to you, we'll approve the project, but we're not going to allow semis into that area? You know, do you want us to say no and you have no project, or do you want to have something modified that we all can come away with feeling good about?
We won't be able to build this facility without the flexibility to do that. We'll need to build it somewhere else. And we don't have the site plan approval within Argent to do that today. So we couldn't do it in the other 500 acres that are in a contract. We'd have to come to you guys, similar to the way we're coming to you now, and get a proposal to do it. And those trucks would still have to take a left to get into Argent Boulevard. And, you know, you don't want a left into this facility. So it would still have left concessions. And so if you're saying, hey, you're not going to approve the deal if we say we have to have semis here, then we'd say, thank you for considering it. We'll have to find an alternative location for our office.
I'm not saying anything,
I understand.
but we're here with a lot of anxiety. I'm looking for a way to help you. And obviously this isn't, it isn't for some reason not a good alternative for you. But okay, you run the risk you run. Let's go back to the slide with the 400 feet. This came up at our meeting Monday with SCDOT. At the original, I wasn't here for first reading, but at the workshop, the question of having that entry point right at Village Road was raised because of, again, that's already a dangerous intersection. And having all those big vehicles come in there, that's a tough point. And we were told that SCDOT wants T intersections. But Monday, we were told that it's not necessary if they're 400 feet away from the other intersection. So now I'm looking at this, and 400 feet to the right, why can't we put the entrance point in there?
I'm not a traffic engineer. I'll let the traffic engineer explain it. But my understanding is it has to do with the other entrances that are across the, I'll let him explain it better than me.
Hey, Dylan Turner with Kinley Horn. Got my pointer back, so we're good from Monday. So just two things to talk about that was also said with SCDOT about the 400 feet is we can't be within the influence area of another intersection, and we can't affect other properties. That also was said about the 400 feet from Josh. So I just kind of laid out a little exhibit here. So if we went 400 feet to the left here, we would still be within the influence area because there is a left turn lane into Village Drive. So our left turn lane in would be in conflict with that left. So there's influence area there. Our right turn decel that we're proposing would go through an adjacent property, which Josh also said we don't want to affect other property owners. So there's that part of it as well with this 400 feet. If we go to the right, we don't have a driveway on our side, yet we have the Hardeeville fire station right here, that our left turn lane and taper would go beyond their driveway. So as vehicles are stacked into turn left, because we have to have that stacking, we're then approaching and encroaching on the fire department if we go 400 feet to the right. So that's why we are here aligned with Village Drive. SCDOT's preference, it's on their cover, is to avoid jog driveways. So that's in their manual, about 400 feet. But you have to look at everything else around it. What's the influence around that 400 feet? Not just go 400 feet and put something there. We have to also consider what else is out there.
Here's what confuses me, and I'm not an expert. I didn't go to school for this. But aren't you infringing on Village Drive? They don't count. They have 500 apartments there. Don't they count as infringing?
So not as far as the road influence goes. So as far as the influence area, by aligning with it, we become part of their influence area. So I know this is pretty technical, but no, they want us to align because we're going to be offsetting from them. And so then we become part of that intersection influence for that alignment. If we offset, we create other issues downstream versus aligning.
If you have the entrance in there and you have all these big vehicles coming in, you create something else. You create a serious public safety concern by everybody who lives along Argent Boulevard.
A counterpoint to that I will say, and I talked to two, so in the world of traffic engineering, we have all these other licensees. So two road safety practitioners, that safety is the name of their game, about locating it elsewhere across in Village Drive. They said by locating it elsewhere along Argent Boulevard, you're creating a greater safety problem than the alignment. And so I would not feel comfortable as a traffic engineer moving this driveway any further to the right or left because of the other downstream influences you have.
So it seems to me the best solution is don't allow heavy trucks into this site.
I think that the road can be designed for heavy vehicles. So the road can be designed for it. I think we can't allow heavy vehicles into it.
And how do you design Argent Boulevard? That's a 2-lane,
Yeah.
no shoulder. That's the problem. The problem is up and down Argent Boulevard, and we're just making it worse.
Right. I mean, I drove Argent all day today. I went back and forth to really get a feel. I drove it before. I've driven it a lot of times. I'm down here quite a bit for projects. What you don't have along Argent very frequently, and that see it today, is you do not have turn lanes into driveways. Village Drive is an exception. Some of the newer developments, you can see they're building their turn lanes. So by building the turn lane here, we're creating, you get that vehicle out of the through lane, you're reducing the probability of a rear end. So we can design this. So we are held to the roadway design manual. So Councilman Guzman brought this up about the roadway design manual, the arms manual, and the different years and stuff. So the road design manual is what we'd be held to for design. So we'd have to have truck turns. So whenever Tripp's doing the projects and permitting with Julie Fleming with SCDOT, he's got to have appropriate truck radius, truck turns in and out of this driveway. So that's how we would design for it. There would be a widening of Argent Boulevard to get our turn lanes in. And in addition to that, these turn lanes are going to be designed for 55 miles an hour. So they're going to be longer than if Argent likely, right now the data's not there. It's just not there. But whenever Argent is likely reduced to 45, just with upcoming volume, signals and stuff, it's just not there now. Our turn lanes are going to be longer than needed, therefore giving greater distances for stacking than if it was posted at 45 now, they'd be shorter and then not having as much stacking space for the trucks to be in there.
Next question. I have to apologize to council. I haven't turned it over to the questioning. Let's say, what's proposed by right now is to make this for heavy-duty trucks a right-in, right-out only. Okay? Not for the smaller vehicles, but for the heavy semis, whether they carry trusses or whatever, semis.
Bigger trucks, yeah, yes, sir.
So let's say the council is amenable to that. How do we monitor?
So that's a good question, and I don't know on policies or stuff if I don't know if there's abilities to find in place. I don't know that if a resident sees it, takes a picture. I do not know that answer as far as the actual enforcement, because the driveway design such, you could have truck signs that's like no left turns. You can put it on the property, and if we had, I don't know if we have on that left turn a median or not, but you could put signs for trucks, no left turns. And then it would be on Pulte or ICG to tell their truck drivers no lefts. So it's enforcement on their end. And then I do not know about policy enforcement from the city of Hardeeville's end.
Second question, this is to anybody who can answer it. Do you pay for a police camera that can be monitored by our police department?
Would that be possible, Mayor? I mean, I don't know.
Would that be possible?
How much does that cost? I'm not familiar with them.
How much would it cost, Chief?
Right now, Mayor, thank you, Mayor and City Council. Right now, we're proposing our fourth phase to put cameras out on Argent Boulevard anyway. That's over $100,000 project. So that's what we got in our budget for this.
That's for all the cameras along Argent Boulevard.
Counting
But
Argent Boulevard too.
for them to chip in the one that would go at their entrance, what's one camera cost? Good answer. We'll go with his answer.
I'm looking at probably 13 cameras, so divide that up into that $100,000 project, not counting
Oh, you're gonna
labor and
check it.
stuff like that.
It's about $7,000. Actually,
And of
more.
course, we would probably add some LPR cameras out there also to read tags and stuff too.
Add whatever you can.
Yes, sir. We'll try.
So wait, before you go, what if, and again, if we approve this right in, right out only and we have it monitored with a camera, do we have, how much can we fine them? Can we put as part of this ordinance like a $5,000 fine?
No, sir.
Huh?
No, sir. It'd be a traffic violation that we could, if one of our officers see it happening on the spot, he could stop that vehicle and charge him probably up to about a $250 fine for turning improperly.
Could we, as part of the master plan, require Pulte to find their own people? Mrs. Maines?
You're wanting a criminal violation put into
No, just a fine for
into the master plan? I don't think so. No.
It'd definitely be a traffic violation, sir. I mean, that would go against
Right.
their driver's license and stuff like that.
Certainly, we could have a policy as Pulte that if the
Policy, yeah.
violating these kinds of things,
Yeah.
or some repercussions about staying.
Pulte could put in whatever policy they want to. But again, it still comes down to writing a traffic ticket if you see a violation. So, or a warning. It don't have to be. Somebody can get a warning for it also.
I'm not suggesting they become punitive. I'm simply saying that if I was Pulte, I wouldn't want people that were not following the rules and the law for the danger and hurting their reputation as any company.
Yes, sir.
I wanted a punitive. That's what I was talking.
I know you were, but
Can't
Sam's
take that
right.
jersey out of the boy.
Can't take that jersey out of me.
Take 'em out the
Okay.
Swamp, maybe, but
I'm sorry, council, that I went out of line, but since I did have a conversation with Matt the other night, I thought it was best to get that into the public record. So let me get back on track, and I'll start with Mrs. Guzman. Do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, actually, I do have a couple of questions. So this is going to be a right in, right out from the same area, right? We're not going to have two
Or
different.
semis.
Yes. So I think you guys have heard me talk about this issue before when I was on shortcut trying to make a left onto Argent, and then there was a semi in front of me trying to make a right onto Argent. And I watched this guy take the turn, and he didn't make it all the way into the right lane where he was supposed to make it, okay? Usually I never pay attention to these type of things. I'm kind of like lost in my thoughts and do my own thing. But since I'm on city council and these things have been coming up frequently, I now pay attention to what I'm doing on the road because I want to put myself in the shoes of our taxpayers when we approve these kinds of things, because what affects them affects us. And I think we need to take that into consideration, serious consideration. So, an 18-wheeler he turned east onto Argent, and he took the oncoming traffic lane to safely make that turn. So, doing some technical, I'm not a traffic person, but you know what? I love to do research, and I spend a lot of time on these different websites looking at different things, and came to the conclusion. Okay, so so what happened with this guy that went into the lane going the other way, he exceeded the maximum swept path of travel and caused the vehicle to go off track, which means instead of him being able to turn into that lane and minding his own business go that way, he went into the opposing traffic lane. So my concern is, when that happens, if the driver overcorrects and that tractor trailer jackknifes or it overturns somewhere and you're in opposing traffic lane and something happens, bad accidents happen like that. Who's going to be responsible? I mean, what are you guys going to do to mitigate that?
I can let the traffic engineer answer the technical side of the radius, but if you look at the shortcut intersection with Argent Boulevard, there are none of the turn lanes that we're proposing. There's none of the radius that we're proposing here. His design is incorporating a lot more than the shortcut radius intersection has today to mitigate for that. But the ultimate question you asked is who's responsible? Obviously, it's the driver. If the driver does something and causes a problem, causes a wreck of any kind, it's the driver and the company that he's driving for.
So you're saying it's going to be a right in and right out. Okay, so when you're taking that right in, the tractor trailer with trusses, and I know you said it may not have trusses, but if the trusses are coming in and getting stored there, those trusses have to move out to your construction site, correct?
In the rare case, not in the every case. We're not sending every truss to this location.
Okay, even if it's 5 trusses for one house, it's going to come in, sit there, and then come back out. So what do you go? So, okay, now I'm
We're
confused.
still stuck on that. I know. I hate that that's how he got stuck on this project because it's not the intention of this site. We are not sending every truss package for every home we build to this location.
But you will send at least one truss package. You may send.
We want the flexibility to.
Okay, so you want the flexibility. So that means we approve this project, you have the flexibility to do that. That means after we give you the approval and you say you have the flexibility, it could be 1 package to 2 packages to 3, because then after that, we don't have any control over this situation, correct?
The way I helped try to mitigate that was what I mentioned earlier that I expressed to the mayor. The size of this laydown area is large enough that I could see concern around how many can you get there. And I proposed that why don't we shorten it up so that you know that I can't get as many as what could be on this original site plan. With all the parking we need and the facility, I'm being told it would be 5 or less that could be parked on the remaining site that I proposed. So the question you ultimately asked is the plan would be the condition that we were willing to put on through the property, the use restriction of a right in, right out for trusses until signalization happened at the intersection. The trusses would have to come in from 278. They would turn right into our project. When the truss truck, semi of any sort, left our property and went out, they would take a right. And the intersection, he can explain it better than I can, but the intersection would be designed better than shortcut intersection is today. Shortcut intersection is a little bit more restricted the way it's designed.
Right. So how wide is that throat going to be?
Griff, you might have, sorry. Yeah, I'll answer one question about it, is the width of it, but Shortcut is an older design road, and so the radius on Shortcut probably was not designed for the appropriate design vehicle. So you mentioned it a little bit in your research on Monday, but these different trucks all have different radiuses and
Correct.
stuff. And so whenever we go through the design with SCDOT, we have to have the right radiuses for our design vehicle. And so it'll be a bigger radius for the truck to make that turn. And you'll probably have truck turn stuff in the design package.
Certainly. So what width will it be? I think commercial driveways can be no less than 30 to 40 feet, but we don't know at this point. What we will do is, like Dylan said, once we know the turn lane mitigation, we'll have to set up all that geometry, and we'll do just what you referenced, the swept path analysis. And likely DOT will want to see that from us. We'll do it regardless, but we'll set up the intersection and the radius on the driveway so that our design vehicle, that interstate semi truck, which is probably larger than their truss truck, I'm not certain, but it's typically is the most conservative design. That's what we'll design to. They'll make sure that not only can we turn into the site and out of the site, also we'll have to demonstrate that our opposing left turns, Village Drive, someone was sitting there and turning left, and someone was turning left out of our driveway, that movement could also be made without a conflict.
So what you're saying is other than the trailers, other vehicles are going to be allowed to turn left onto Argent going in that direction.
That's what we propose.
So, and there's no signalization of that intersection right now.
Correct. It'd be stop controlled side streets on a two-lane.
So are you not worried about safety? Because, it's like it's 55 miles an hour on Argent. I don't drive on Argent anymore because I'm scared. I don't come down Shortcut anymore because I'm scared. I don't want to take my life into my own hands going on that. I go all the way to 78 because it's crazy. So if you're going to have a car take a left turn to go on westbound Argent, and it's 55 miles an hour, there's no stop sign on Argent to tell people to stop because there's somebody from your development hanging a left onto Argent going that way. How are you going to prevent a very serious accident taking place there when it's flowing traffic at 55 miles an hour? I'm saying it's 55 because that's what it says, but I know whenever I drive down Argent, I don't do 55. I'm hitting 60. Chief, close your ears. I'm doing 60 or sometimes 65.
Yes, ma'am.
So
all I can say to that is it's a typical stop control side street. So it's the same situation you have at any other place where you don't have a signal entering a highway from a side street. And what we know, and Dylan's, I think, got his best to describe is from practice, research, experience. And Matt brought this up again. We've got a 90-degree aligned intersecting road at an existing street intersection. From practice and everything we know, I can't say it's safe, but it is the safest alternative in design for
you
driveway
guys.
and no, for in general. This project, I mean, any other project, any other place, that is the by the book, safest, best design approach that we can suggest.
So I'm trying to make this as short as possible because
Do what you have to do.
so if they are taking a right loaded trussers, bags of cement, whatever it is coming in, okay? The reason I asked how wide that throat was going to be is because that turning radius of that 18-wheeler is not small. They are at least 25 to 40 feet wide, depending on the degree of angle that guy turns that wheel, okay? What are you guys going to do to prevent the off-tracking of that vehicle when you're coming into the development, into your property? Because, it will off-track, because if it doesn't have a wide enough throat, it will off-track.
That's right. Our pavement on the inside of this radius on the pavement, I can't guarantee that what's shown on the page here is absolutely correct. That'll come through design, but that pavement that radius will be widened such that there is sufficient room. That's what we have to demonstrate. We have to do that swept path analysis to show that that truck can make that turn on the pavement that's there.
And depending on the vehicle that's turning in there is how that swept path analysis
Yes,
is
ma'am.
going to be done, because you have to take into consideration where the center point of the front axle is when it's making that turn, and then the overhang of the rear tire or the inner rear tires and the one in front. So I spent the whole weekend last week studying all these diagrams, and I looked at the 90-degree turn, and I looked at the 45-degree turn, and the thing that will work in everyone's favor will be that 90-degree turn, because it's pretty straightforward. But if it's like less than 90 degrees, then you're going to have, I foresee issues with those vehicles off tracking in there.
Yes, ma'am. I'd say encourage you to look YouTube vehicle tracking or auto turn. It's the simulation software that we use. It's online. It literally will not draw the truck turning if it cannot make the turn. It's all that's pre-programmed into the software. That's part of what we do is run that analysis and make sure that it functions.
The only thing I was going to add is I do think you're exactly right. The intersection at Shortcut's probably a 22-foot wide pavement section, but the acute angle, you just nailed it. With it not being 90 at Shortcut, it's got an acute angle when they took that right. And the combination of the shorter or the narrower throat there and the acute angle is what caused them to come off the pavement.
Yeah, that's what worries me, is the off tracking. And
They won't let you do that anymore.
And if it's with a full load in there and they're off track, the chances of him off tracking and then trying to overcorrect that off tracking, and then for some reason it either the load shifts, it jackknifes, turns over, you have a major mess on Argent that will probably take 2 days to complete. And that's my worry, is the safety again, the traffic issues.
Yeah, I trust you believe that the design team, both here with the professionals, but also your staff, is going to make sure that doesn't happen. They're going to require the design turns. DOT is going to require the design turns are done correctly to make sure that the trucks will be able to stay on pavement.
Okay. Wait and see. I'm done.
Mr. White.
Just a comment, and it's not a hidden message, Val, but my sense is that you guys have spent a lot more than weekends looking at these things. You spent a lifetime, and that's why we have the confidence you're going to do that. But at the same time, Val has raised some very valid safety points, and so our assumption is you've heard the safety points, you've got years of experience, and you will assimilate that data so that her concern will not be a concern, because you'll do that. So it's great that she raised them. We hope that you have got the years of experience, which we believe this, so we're not stumping you. Yeah, this is something you know how to do. So that's just my comment. Matt, I have a question for you. You said that when the trusses come, instead of being placed kind of off to the side, you're hoping to be able to develop those send those right to the site where they're going to be used. That's what I heard. I thought I heard you say, and I'm checking it. So you got 5 sites, 5 trestles coming in, and you have 5 sites where you're going to build a house, and your plan is to get those to those 5 sites. Maybe one is going to be held up a day or two, so you may have to store it temporarily. Is that what you're saying? Did I hear you?
Yeah,
Right.
I can't tell you if it's 95 or 98 or 99%, but it is not our intention to send any of the trusses to this location unless we get to a point where there's a safety concern. We're dropping the trusses on the site would cause a bigger risk of fire marshal access, fire truck access. Our plan is not to send trusses to this location, but the flexibility allows us to make sure that we weigh the option of sending them here versus not putting them in a neighborhood. You can drive all of our neighborhoods. We don't have this facility today. If you go to the King Creek Lane location, there's no trusses in my parking lot today. That is not the way we want to deliver trusses.
It wouldn't seem to me, just as a novice, that it wouldn't be cost effective or operationally effective to be moving them around. You want to get it and put it where you're going to use it. And that's why you're a successful business, and you've figured that out. And so we know there will be some delays and some things, but what we're hoping is that this isn't going to be more than temporary, a couple problems or this or that. So that's the assumption we're operating on, and I think you're validating that with your response to what I'm saying.
Yeah, and my goal was with the use restriction was to say, we understand none is what you want. And so if we maintain a right in, right out, we try to mitigate, if we reduce the size of the yard that they can be laid in, again, we're trying to mitigate the concern that we're hearing from you. We're trying to be responsive to what the council
Yeah.
suggested to us.
And our message is clear and you're hearing it. And so what we hope is that will show up in what you do as opposed to what we're saying.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Carroll.
I'm glad Bo asked that question because I was puzzled when you made that remark about the trussels, but I understand after Bo asked you that question, that the majority of them, 90%, 95% are going to be delivered and they're going to be used right in that area. So I just couldn't back and forth. I didn't understand that. And Val had some good points. I was on Argent the other day, and that was coming out of there, and I know exactly what she's saying, but you understand exactly what she was saying, and you're saying that that road is a lot narrower than what the roads would be today, and that y'all are compensating for the 90-degree turn and whatever. So that was my issues, and Val asked them good, and then the question Bo had. So that's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Let's go back to that intersection again. Right now, let's say we make the semis go right in, right out. That still leaves a left-hand turn lane for other vehicles coming into this site. There's already a left-hand turn lane at that very point going into Village Drive. So now what it seems to me, what we're creating here, the possibility of regular vehicles, they could be making a left-hand turn through the left-hand turn lane going into Village Drive. At the same time, people are making a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn out of Village Drive. And you see there's a lot of turns being allowed in that small radius of time. And that seems, or that small area, that seems to be quite unsafe. Do you follow what I'm saying? You know that intersection has already, left and right allowed turns for vehicles coming in. Now we're going to add another capability of making a left-hand turn and left-hand turn in at an intersection that has a history of accidents. And as traffic people, doesn't that concern you?
To answer the question, so we can design to make the intersections as safe as we can, and that is what we're going to do. We cannot control drivers and their decisions. We have to design these roads, our intersections, our driveways, to be as safe as they can for the design manuals, and sometimes even going overboard. Tripp has said that he would even design our entranceway for a bigger vehicle than probably what's required by a CDOT. So taking those extra mitigation steps to help make these intersections safer is what we're doing on this project. And I'll say to what I said before, aligning the intersection from a driver expectation standpoint, sorry, need some water. So driver expectation standpoint is the safest option for a driveway here. Offsetting the driveways to the left or right makes it less safe.
For the life of me, you will never make me understand that statement. With the amount of turns that's happening at that. And also, let's face it, SCDOT has approved a light at 278 at Sun City once the warrants are met. At Shortcut Road, the warrants are already there. There's already a light at 170. And probably the worst intersection right now, and getting worse, is Riverton Point. We haven't even talked about that. This is a 4-mile stretch. We already have the need for 5 lights. And this, based on your traffic counts, will never hit the warrant for a light. So, you know,
That's not true.
I cannot give an approval with the ultimate possibility that a light will go in there, because to me, it's improbable. With all the other lights that have to go in there first and all the other problems and time taking them, the one that will have the least amount of turns in and out, based on your own, is the one here. You'll still have a lot from the apartment. So I'm just trying to emphasize to the council that we can't, the magic solution isn't, oh, a light will be here in 5 years. Don't count it. I discount it as a viable possibility in my lifetime. And how many people do we endanger before that light goes up? And that's the concern.
We can't install the light until the warrants are met.
Yes.
That's the problem. And so right now with the traffic volumes that are there, when our site opens up, the warrants would not be met. However, there's a lot of planned development off of Village Drive, and there's a traffic study that shows a traffic light here once that develops out. So SCDOT will not permit it. It will not permit the signal without the volume. And that's where we're
My
at.
point exactly.
So that's why right now we're setting up our driveway to be as safe as possible. And so when the light comes in, you have the typical 4-lane or 4-leg intersection approaches so that we can accommodate that.
You know, one other point.
Lee Poachman with ICG. Just wanted to reorient everyone to the type of volume we're talking about is quite low use. The office that Matt alluded to would house about 25 people, and these are office workers that won't be coming and going very often. The trucks that we've been talking about, 10 per week, that's 2 per day. 2 per day. And that's supply. That's including anything trusses. Those are 10 flatbed trucks total, whether it's a truss or it's lumber or whatever. So we're not a commercial location. People don't come here to buy stuff, or this is really, you come to work in the morning, you parked, there's occasional truck traffic out to the site to construct, but these aren't comings and goings and lots of constant churn and turns in and turns out. It's mainly typical work hours.
Which, to my point, you'll never get to the warrants and the light will never happen. And that's, by your own admission. You can't say there's going to be, and from what I understand, the warrants have to be met in every direction, not just from Village Road.
One direction.
I'm not going to get into it. We've been here a long time, but that's not what I've been told by SCDOT and staff for all the years I've been here. But that's beside the point. And so I'll move on. One of the things about the yard, first of all, Matt, you said you would reduce the yard. So how do we put that in any motion? That's number one. And number two, what Val's point was, if we give approval, then you could change it at any time. How do we control via our approval that there will only be a limited amount of space allowed for trusses? Because right now the master plan still shows all that space. How do we protect ourselves from the agreement that they're proposing?
As we've mentioned several times, there will be, this project will have to go through SRC. It would be a zoning violation. It would be a violation of everything if we did a spot check and came out there and they had trusses where they weren't supposed to be. We have things like that occurring all the time where we find these violations, and that they would be held in violation of their site plan approval.
What I'm asking is this. What Matt has suggested is to reduce the space. By reducing the space, then the ability to put a number of trusses in there is reduced. So how do we put that promise into the motion and change the master plan accordingly? Madam Attorney, do you have a suggestion?
Was the map amended already to show
No.
that?
No, that's the
No.
original
You
one.
just, you just,
Closing as an idea, so.
you just make that as a contingent, it's a condition of your master plan approval.
It would be put in the text and on that diagram, and that's how we would approve it through the next few.
Are there dimensions to what this is reduced to?
What we had proposed or thought that would be acceptable was approximately 3.5 acres. If you take this inflection point on that wetland system and come straight across, that would leave about 3.5 acres here. You lop off, you know, as you look at the amount of space here, you're taking about approximately half of it, a little bit more than half of it away by coming across here.
What I'm asking staff attorney is how, if the council wants to approve that with that condition, how do we put that in the document that we approve? Would you write that down? Okay.
Is it, how many acres was it approximately?
3.5.
And including the right in, right out for semis. Shouldn't that have some specification, 18 wheels, 12 wheels, whatever? Shouldn't that have?
Appropriate signage.
Pardon?
Appropriate signage will work.
And appropriate size and also, and signage and the camera, of course. Right, Chief?
I don't want to hold off on the camera just because I don't know what it costs, and I'm a little afraid of how it would be enforced. If y'all are enforcing it, great. If it comes to me to enforce it, I'm a little concerned that I have that authority.
How about if we said you'll contribute $10,000 towards the camera of East Argent?
That's more amenable to me.
Huh?
Real good figure, sir.
You want me to ask for more?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we can get that information. I just don't have it with me today.
No, but if this council wants to approve this, I don't want to lose loose ends because Mrs. Guzman makes a good point. We want to approve what we want to see, not, oh, we'll take care of it later. We want it in the document if we're going to approve anything.
Just one point of clarification. When I said the 3.5 acres, I do still need my stormwater pond. So I don't want to get lost in that. I want to make sure that what I was talking about was really it's the storage in the office area. It was approximately 3.5 acres. So I do need my stormwater pond. You know, I don't know the exact shape and size of it down here, but I'm talking about limiting the parking as it comes across here. Stormwater pond will still need to be developed and built.
So the back is parking and the far back was for storage.
Somewhere right around there. If y'all want to, I mean, we probably have a printout of this we can draw on it.
Can I ask a question? What's that gray area called right now?
Gray area.
Where you're talking about doing the reduction?
Reduction of the laydown here.
Laydown area.
So Matt, do you have a problem with $10,000 towards the camera?
You said 5.
The chief said, thought I said 100, but so would you rather my number or the chief's?
At some point, it does become unviable. If it's $10,000 gets the deal done, I think we can make that work.
Okay, so and again, I'm asking questions. I have no idea what my fellow council people have in terms of their decision. So, but in the case that somebody does give a motion, Madam Attorney, could you write all the things down that it would be included in? Wait, everybody tonight thinks I have great vision. All right, so at this point, if we haven't exhausted everybody in the audience, I'd like to now open this up for the public. Does the public, anyone in the public have any comments or questions? Yes, ma'am. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Pamela Shergott, 95 River Oakway, Hardeeville. I travel Argent Road every day to work, so I just have one quick question, just so that I understand. If they're going to make a right-hand turnout with an 18-wheeler and it's 55 miles an hour, you have somebody who, sorry, Chief, but it's going to be 63 or higher because 8 and you skate. So you go right and you're going 63 miles an hour down that road, and here comes an 18 wheeler pulling out to the right. Is there going to be an acceleration lane for them? Because if they're pulling out and making that right hand turn, they're going to have somebody right on their butt in 2 seconds flat, and that's not going to work. So my question is there going to be an acceleration lane on Argent Road for that tractor trailer to like get some speed going before he pulls out into the flow of traffic?
I'll take your question one step further because we've dealt with this at Exit 5. And what these big vehicles do, they get impatient just like everybody else. They stick their nose out. You better stop because they're not going to get hurt. It's the person coming along. So your question is, so somebody can answer it, is there going to be an acceleration lane? Is there going to be an acceleration lane?
No, there won't be an acceleration lane, and SCDOT would not allow an acceleration lane. This got brought up on the previous project as well, where I think maybe you had asked Monday about an acceleration lane, Councilman Guzman, or Councilwoman, sorry, Guzman, that they won't allow the acceleration lanes, so there would not be one here. And they don't like substandard acceleration lanes. They're getting rid of them as part of their RSA projects right now.
Before I go on, Juan, I sent you an email a couple minutes ago with a couple of pictures. Is it much trouble to put those up on the screen? Go to, okay, and the second one. You see the second one? That's coming into Dreamscape Drive. And as you can see, and this is to Mrs. Guzman's point, in order to make the turn, that truck is actually coming into my lane. Now, what you don't see, this gives you a sense of the size of these trucks. But what you didn't see, and I couldn't get my camera out of my pocket fast enough, is that these trucks put themselves right in front of the ongoing traffic. And you better stop. And it's not the only place we dealt with this before. And that's the problem with these vehicles. They won't wait. And they're bigger than everybody else. So you better get out of their way. And that's the problem that on Argent Boulevard being such a narrow road that we're all concerned about here. Is that exact thing, which that's a visual of exactly what Mrs. Guzman has been talking about. And so I guess if we're going to approve this, Brandon, we need some sort of assurances, and we would rely on you, that these turning radiuses, which are obviously not adequate in this example, are enough to prevent this kind of thing happening.
Thank you, Mayor. There are several levels of protection, and I'm gonna make sure Katie and I can address those, and as well as these traffic engineers and others. SCDOT reviews that as we go through our SRC process. We don't issue it until they have theirs. The fire marshal is involved with all of this SRC review, and none of that can happen until everything that you have in these documents that has been said through this process, PDD, master plan, is those standards are met before they get any kind of approval to be able to move forward.
We also have a civil engineer on staff review committee as well that will also verify those turning radiuses.
Can we make one clarification too on this plan? So there's a distinct difference in this driveway and our plan. Our project is a commercial driveway and existing street intersection, which requires much greater turning radiuses, everything else. This is a a truck entering a construction site or residential development. It's not designed permanently for truck access, only for passenger cars. So our design criteria is significantly different than what you see in this example.
Again, what Mrs. Guzman is trying to say to you, and picture this is a left-hand turn into that. But the point is about this is that the turning radius of this is so wide. Now, even with a right-hand turn, the throat has to be such that that truck will not need the radius that will go into the left-hand turn lane, go into the left lane that's going west on Argent Boulevard. And that's why she asked about the acceleration lane.
Absolutely.
Okay, anybody else from the public? We're still in public comments. Juan, do we have anyone from social media?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So at some point, we always have to make a decision. So if there's a motion to approve, obviously you don't, if it's to disapprove, we don't need this, what's written up here. But if there is a motion to approve, there's a couple of things that we should add into the motion. So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve, disapprove, or make any changes. And this is, excuse me, I've lost all my papers. What's the ordinance number?
2023-2-16B.
Okay, thank you. Do we have that motion?
Mr. Mayor,
There's one further question before we entertain the motion. Yes, Mrs. Guzman.
Okay, so for the traffic folks out here, you're saying that the smaller vehicles coming westbound on Argent, turning left into the development, you're going to allow that, correct? So in the meantime, we have vehicles that's going to turn a left into Village Park. So you do see that there's a very poor line of vision there. People coming this way, people turning this way, people going the other way. How are you going to make sure that that stays safe, that the left turns, the two left turns? Because that intersection, I don't care where it is, it's a really bad line of vision. You can't see who's coming on the other side until you get yourself out into the intersection. That's one of my concerns too. So how would you mitigate that as far as the line of vision?
Either one of us could try. I mean, it's a dead straight road, so it's the optimum sight distance scenario that we can have. So the driver's eyes are offset. Certainly, at times when there are opposing vehicles in both turn lanes simultaneously at the same time, that vision is limited slightly. But I mean, it's the turn lanes will be aligned, the driver's eyes will be offset. It's a straight road, so you've got as you're coming to there, you've got the opportunity to observe what's happening, traffic coming the opposite direction before you even go to make that turning movement. You have the turn lane in order to get out of the flow of traffic, so you're not stopping. That you can wait until there's a clear opportunity to turn. It's just
Okay, I just
best
hope-
situation possible.
I just hope you guys are correct. What do you call that? What was the term, Mr. Mayor, for that? The suicide lanes?
Yeah, I was corrected, but
Oh.
it's still suicide.
Yeah.
Yes. Definition was a little off. Okay, let's go back to a motion. Do we have a motion? There's a couple things that aren't on there, but I'll walk you
gonna
through
help
it.
me through it?
I'll help you through it.
Okay, appreciate that very much.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
you're welcome. I'll send you a bill in the morning.
All right, I make a motion that we approve on second reading ordinance 2023-2 16B with the following conditions. 1, appropriate signage for semi-truck traffic. 2, reduction of approximately 3.5 acres or laydown area.
C, 18-wheelers will be right in, right out only. 18 wheels the right thing, Brenna? There will be a contribution of $10,000 for
Mayor.
a security camera at the entrance.
Mayor, I would advise that's not part of your master plan approval. It can be a separate agreement with the applicant.
Okay. So let's make it that Pulte agrees to a separate agreement about a camera. Don't put a number on it. Is that okay?
Just, it's not one of your conditions of the approval. I would
Okay,
advise
so
that you don't do that.
We'll have a separate agreement, and I'm sure Matt will take care of it, right, Matt?
You know what, fun.
And so we have the right in, right out. We have, okay, I think that's it.
Can I just, if we get a signal, we'll be able to take a left later. Can I get that added? And it's 3.5 acres is what we're reducing it down to, not taking out 3.5 acres.
You're reducing it down to.
Should be, yes, you're right. When I was reading, it should be, but it says it, but it should be reduction to approximately. It has of, but I will amend that, Mr. Mayor. Reduction to approximately 3.5 acres, not of.
For the laydown area.
Yes, sir, for a laydown area.
John, what was the second motion?
Reduction to approximately 3.5 acres for laydown area.
That was the second motion. What was the first one?
Appropriate signage for semi-truck traffic.
In other words, with the right in, right out, the trucks they're going to put signs in that trucks are not allowed to.
Now, does our definition of semi-trucks coincide with their definition of semi-trucks? Because I don't want us to be held to one standard and they come back and say, hey, that is not our standard as far as a semi is concerned. Can we?
Semis are how many wheels?
18
Are they 18 wheelers or 12 wheelers or?
What are they? 30? I don't know.
We use the, as I've mentioned also in the past, we use the American Planning Association's definition, and that covers all of that type of vehicle.
Okay.
So
Thanks, Brenna.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further comments or questions by council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem White.
Yes.
Councilwoman Houston.
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. Okay. You have it. We've made some modifications. I'll just say one last time, and as my final comment, I still think it's terribly unsafe what we're doing there. I just feel it. I don't have the expertise or the ability to verbalize it, but it's Argent Boulevard is a problem, and welcome. You are now part of the problem. Okay. Thank you. Good luck. Mr. Zimboy, manager's report. Oh, you're kidding. All right, got my, all right, oh, new business. I'm on the wrong page. My brain's frazzled. We have the first reading of an ordinance authorizing and directing the city of Hardeeville to enter in an intergovernmental agreement relating to the South Carolina Local Revenue Services. This is ordinance 2023-4-20A. Mr. Zimbor, please.
Yes, sir. So this is turn my microphone on. This is a housekeeping ordinance, so we do fortunately participate in the Local Revenue Services Program, MASC. Some of the terms have been rebranded, so basically this ordinance allows us to continue to participate in the program and to collect insurance tax, broker's tax, telecommunications tax. So basically this ordinance allows us to participate, continue to participate. We're recommending adoption at first reading.
Okay, let's start the questioning with Mr. Carroll.
No questions, Mr. Mike, oh, I thought, okay, no questions, Mr. Mayor. I think Mike defined it pretty good. I'm getting tired too.
Mr. White,
Cut and dry, no questions.
Mrs. Guzman.
No questions.
This is housekeeping, no questions. I'd like to now invite the public to weigh in. Any comments or questions by the public? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion to approve, disapprove, or make any changes to the first reading of ordinance 2023-4-20A.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that, on first reading, that we approve ordinance 2023-4-20A.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further comments or questions by council? Seeing none, I'll call for a voice vote on this. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Next, we have first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Administration of the Hardeeville Code of Ordinances for the purpose of amending appearance of citizens and related matters. This is 2023-4-20B. Mr. Zimbor, please.
I'll handle giving a brief summary of that, Mayor.
Okay.
So what this is just a codification of some rules of public comment and appearances for citizens. I believe some of our neighboring communities have adopted these similar rules. The city of Hardeeville was following these things in practice. I know the mayor reads the rules for public comment. So all this does is amend our ordinance to include them to be in our ordinance. And there's an additional edit, which is section C if you look, and it talks about public comments for electronic meetings. Again, you have been following these rules for public comments. It's just putting it into your code of ordinances.
Great. I think that personally, I think it's wise that we are codifying it. Let's start with Mrs. Guzman. Do you have any comments or questions?
No, I think it's a great idea.
Mr. White,
I agree with Fowler's comment. Good idea.
Mr. Carroll,
Oh, it's always good to codify.
Thank you, Judge.
here come the judge. Yes, I think this is really very thorough, and it from what I've read, it covers all the contingencies, which is what we want to do. So good job writing this up, Mrs. Maines. And I have no further questions. Do we have any comments or questions from the public, those of you who are still awake? Anybody on social media, Juan?
No, sir. Nothing.
Okay, seeing none, I'd like a motion to approve, disapprove, or make any changes to the first reading of ordinance 2023-4-20B.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve on first reading ordinance 2023-4-20B.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any further comments or questions by council? Seeing none, I'll call for a voice vote on this. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, that passes 4-0. The first reading on both of these will be in May something. Mr. Zimbor, manager's report.
Three quick things. So I did speak previously about our efforts with workforce training to get Beaufort County and Jasper County to partner with us, and surprisingly, both jurisdictions are going to step up to the plate, and they do want to partner with us. So we're, intergovernmental agreements will be forthcoming, which should allow for at least additional 30 people a year, hopefully for the next 3 years, to be paid for by Beaufort County and Jasper County. So that's a wonderful partnership. So we're thrilled with that. We'll be bringing those forward in hopefully the very near future. May 25th, we will be having our public workshop in partnership with both Beaufort County and Jasper County and LCOG regarding transportation issues affecting the low country. So that'll be May 25th, 2 to 4 at USCB. So we'll have more information on that. And then just a reminder for the council, May 8th, we will be having our MZD workshop on our MZDO update and regarding tree preservation starting at 3 o'clock. And then May 9th would be our second budget workshop at 3 o'clock. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's go down reverse alphabetical order and start with Mr. White.
Attended the transportation briefing and had an opportunity to meet with some of the police officers this week, and very valuable. And that's an update on my activities.
Mrs. Guzman.
I don't have any at this point.
Mr. Carroll.
Nothing except that, I attended the, workshop for the DOT, and also everybody needs to remember Jasper on the Move Awards Banquet next week on 27th.
Okay, I have a number of things to say, and I'm going to hold them until next meeting because nobody's awake to hear them anyway. And I'm not sure I'm awake enough to read what I wrote down. So I'll give my report after the next meeting. And I hear a collective sigh of relief. So that leaves us with one other piece of business. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn our meeting.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everybody, and thank you for those of you who stayed with us. Thank you.